It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Listen Up with me, Ollie Baisley. I am high on energy drinks. I've had a lot of that over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of, especially today, we've had technical issues which have really driven me mad over the last hour. But let's get into the show. First off, we're going to start off with telling you all about what Listen Up is and what the show is going to be going forwards. I am super proud and happy and relieved to finally be bringing it to you guys, because it's been a lot of work in the process. It's taken a lot of time. Then we're going to get on to the main topic of the episode, which is student media and getting involved in the media industry. We have some really exciting interviews for you guys to play there, and some stuff which hopefully you'll find informative and entertaining, because that is what this show is all about. I don't want you guys to go back to your friends after having listened to this show and think, oh my God, Susie, I totally wasted like half an hour of my time because this guy just wouldn't shut up. Hopefully you don't quite feel like that, at least not for the first week. You enjoy it, but also I don't want you to turn off after 5 minutes, because that would kind of negate the whole point. So we're going to try and strike a balance between this. When I say we, I mean I. It's solo produced, solo presented, but we all have guests on at some point, hopefully some live guests as well. And I also forgot to tell you that this is a radio show as well. We're going to be live on Forge Radio every single week, starting in September, starting right now. So check us out at Listen Up Cast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever social media, for the details of when that show will be live. We are pre-recording this podcast so that I have a bit less work to do when I get to university and I don't all freak out trying to do everything at once. So let's talk about what we have coming forwards in the next couple of weeks. We have a really, really interesting interview with the CEO of JCB, Graham McDonald, which was absolutely surreal. I can't tell you enough about that. Their offices alone were just outstandingly ridiculous. Marble floors, it's the sort of thing you'd expect in a Bond movie. It was crazy, and I'm really, really, really proud of that interview. It turned out brilliantly, so I can't wait to give that to you. We also have some content which is going to be kind of on the other end of the spectrum, which is a interview and some kind of pieces on how to get internships and work experience, because that is a huge topic at the moment. Everybody's come back from summer, they're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do next summer? Because obviously as soon as you come back from summer, you plan what's next. And so if some of you guys are doing that now, hopefully we'll be able to bring you in that episode some useful information, some tips on how to make the most of your time and to be as successful as possible. So that is kind of how the show is going to go. Next up, if you look at your podcast app, your podcast feed, Twitter, whatever social media, and you think, oh, I haven't heard from Ollie or Listen Up for the last week, what's happened? It's not because the show's ended, it's not because I've died, it's because that I only want to produce worthwhile content. And if there's stuff which I'm not proud of, I'm not going to put it out there. And I'm more than happy to do so on that. And so don't worry if I miss a week, it's because I am working to make the next week even better. So you might be also wondering, who the hell am I? My name's Ollie. I'm a 20-year-old mechanical engineering student, that's a mouthful, at the University of Sheffield, up in the UK, up in Yorkshire, and I'm heavily involved in Sheffield Student Media Forge. Shout out to all of those guys. And I really, really love broadcasting. I love kind of sharing my opinions, and I just find it really fun to talk about things that I'm interested in. And so hopefully you guys as well, and you'll come along for this journey, and we'll see where it takes us. This might be a one podcast series, hopefully not, I've got more than those planned already, but hopefully it'll be and last as long as it does. So enjoy it while it lasts, and let me know if you hate it. Feel free to tweet me, tell me how much you hate it on a scale of 10, and it better be close to 10, because if you're really going to go out your way to tweet me that you don't like it, go for it. But we're actually at Listen Up Cast on everything, on all platforms. So check those out as well. Please subscribe if you're listening to this for the first time. And so let's get into today's show. Today's show is about student media and getting involved in the media industry. We have some brilliant interviews, and so that's what's up next. So, welcome to episode 1 of Listen Up with me, Ollie Baisley, and this is student media and getting involved in the media industry, and more importantly, why all of you guys should be doing student media, because it is so useful to you in developing skills, developing as a person, and just being wonderful human beings. And this is why you can tell the passion in it. I love it. I'm hugely passionate about it, and I will shout to the rooftops about it. So, let's talk about it. What is student media? You might be thinking, I've never heard of it, but I don't really understand it. Doesn't really make sense. It's not for me. Turning off straight away. Don't. Just give me a chance to explain, and then we'll get into the rest of the show. So, student media is the university, the schools, the colleges, whatever outlet, and it is media by those students, made themselves, directed by themselves, edited by themselves, produced by themselves, presented by themselves, all done by students. And that is the key point. It is a global phenomenon in some ways, and it really happens everywhere. And so if you're listening to this wherever you are, there's definitely a student media outlet that you could probably join. So do check that out, do some research and get it in there. Student media they tend to be radio stations, TV stations, which are probably YouTube channels, and papers which are produced, edited, like I said before, by students. And what is so important about those is that it's a brilliant opportunity to learn, to make mistakes, and to get a foothold into the world of broadcasting, the world of writing, the world of media, which isn't available to anybody else, and they tend to always be free. Some of them aren't, I'm aware of this, but at least most of the ones that I'm aware of in the UK are, and a lot of them don't require auditions or anything like that, so anybody can just go up and get involved straight away. So that is what's so great about them initially. Let's talk about why you should be doing student media, what the benefits are. I was a really, really nervous, not hugely confident 18-and-a-half-year-old, and I kind of jumped into student media, and I'll talk about how I got in later. And it really developed loads of my skills. I learned how to speak English. I learned how to pronounce words, hopefully, most of the time. And it kind of really made me, I'd say, and some other people would probably say around me, blossom. And I'm hugely proud of how I've come along over the last couple of years. I put a lot of that benefit down to student media because it teaches you an awful lot of things. You learn to hate the sound of your voice. You learn to hate how you look on TV. But nevertheless, it is really, really good fun. So how can you get involved, and how did I get involved in student media? Like I said, do your research, go up and speak to them. Even if you're not a university member, there are some radio stations which might take you on anyway, but they need members. Same with TV and press. So definitely check it out. The funny thing is, I got involved with student media, and the people involved are going to hate me for saying this. But one of my good friends, Oscar, knew one of my other good friends, Stevie, and him and her were kind of hanging out at the time. And Oscar spoke to me one morning over breakfast, and we were talking, and he was saying, oh yeah, I have this radio show, I kind of do it late at night, it's quite cool, I get to play whatever music I want, like anybody can do it and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds brilliant, how can I get involved? And I just jumped into it. I sent a couple of emails, contacted some people over Facebook, and yeah, next up there was a meeting which I could attend, went along to that, and the people were amazing. I still remember the first person I spoken to was the future station manager of Forge Radio, Charlie Martin, and I walked into the student media hub first time. She jumped up and said hello, and people at student media tend to be, and as far as I can see and I've encountered, they're super nice people, and they're super helpful, because they need your help and they want your help, because they're understaffed, they haven't got as much resources as everywhere else, and so they're always willing for more people to join. It's often their responsibility to do so, but they're just great people. It attracts a really great sort of people who are motivated to do this in their free time and spend their time on it. So I got into student media that way, started off doing a lot of sports stuff, and really kind of snowballed from there, then did presenting on TV, live sports commentary, all sorts of things. Started podcasts, radio shows, etc., etc. And here we are today. And I'm really, really delighted to be here. And the reason I love it so much, and the reason when I wake up every morning, a lot of my mind is thinking about, what can I do in student media today? Or what can I do in media and broadcasting and television and whatever? And the reason is because I love it. It's super fun. And when you produce something meaningful, and at the end of it, you can look back to think, look, I did a thing. I didn't just waste 4 hours on Netflix. I actually achieved something. And that's what I love about it. And it's just a great group of people. I'm not guaranteeing this, but I've said from my experience, and it always good fun. So definitely get involved. But you're thinking, this guy, Ollie, never achieved much. He's a university student, probably broke. Like, why should I listen to him? And you can choose to or not, but what you should definitely listen to is people who have made it within the industry, people who have made it into student media, or people who have done student media and profited from that and then gone on to improve their career and kind of benefit from it. And the first people that we're going to be speaking to are Dan Walker and Alexander Armstrong. They are both presenters on the BBC. Dan Walker was actually an alumni of Forge Radio back in the day when it was called Shaw Radio. And I spoke to him back in March, I believe, about why it was good to get involved with student media.
Where are you on the dial these days? Because when I was knocking about, it was Shaw FM, which I can't remember what where you needed to go on the old FM frequency to get it. But where can I find Forge these days? Surely you're online.
We're online at forgetoday.com. You can /radio/press and /TV. So plenty to find out.
I've got no excuses there. Absolutely no excuses. I'll be there. Don't you worry.
Okay, that's great. So one question I was going to ask you is, we often encourage journalism students, people who want to get into media, to do Forge. Do you find that your experience as a student media member helped you in your career?
Massively. Whenever I go and speak to students at either university or sort of those in higher education, I tell them that work experience is essential, and not just going and doing things at sort of recognised places like newspapers or local radio stations, but student radio is crucial because, and don't take this the wrong way, it's a great opportunity to sort of find your feet, make your mistakes, sort of get your voice right, get your attitude right, and I think you can really hone some skills there. When I was here at Shaw FM, I used to do it with my housemate, and we got nominated for some student radio awards, and in all honesty, it really gave us a taste for the industry that eventually I went into. He went and worked in computers in the end. I think he's rather annoyed that I went into radio and television, and he went off to work for IBM. But it really was an essential breeding ground, and loads of people who were at Shaw then and have been at Shaw over the years have gone on to work somewhere in the industry. And it's so competitive these days as well. If you can walk into a job at the end of your university or into a job interview and you could say, look, I've done 3 years of student radio, I've worked for the student newspaper, I did work experience here, here and here while I was at university, then your employer is far more likely to look at you and say, okay, this person, this man, this woman, they've got off their backside and actually done some work at university in addition to doing their degree or whatever that course might be. I think that sort of marks you out and gives you that on your CV, that instantly looks different to a lot of people who just want to go into the industry to be famous and don't want to go in there to actually, it sounds again quite sort of twee, but don't want to go in to make a difference and be a journalist and ask the right questions. And I think it's an essential grounding, and in an increasingly competitive industry, it's a sort of an essential rung on the ladder, which I would advise everybody to get involved as much as they possibly could do.
So that was Dan Walker off BBC Breakfast, Match of the Day, various other shows, Football Focus, the Olympics, loads of things. He's a really, really experienced producer, and it was a pleasure to interview him. One of the things what really resonated with me from that interview was how he talked about making mistakes, and that is so important, and student media is all about that. I've made tons of mistakes in my time, and whether it's a kind of swearing on air, which I've done a couple of times, don't tell anybody, or it's other things like that. Student media is a perfect place to do that because the consequences, there are relatively no consequences, and you don't get shut down by Ofcom, but you kind of learn to not make that mistake again, and that's what's so brilliant. And so I never would have maybe blown my radio career or any other career like that if I made the same mistakes I made in student media. And that's one of the things I'm really grateful for it. And Dan is bang on there with what he said. So let's talk about my biggest mistakes, because I think it could be quite a funny topic. A lot of you guys might think this is an absolute amateur thing and be like, oh, what are you doing, Ollie? Come on, but let's talk about them. And you can laugh at me on Twitter or on social media. So I think the biggest one today is probably what happened in my biggest interview that's published so far. That was with Brian Cookson, the head of the UCI president, who was wanted by absolutely every sports journalist in the country at the time when I interviewed him exclusively. And I was interviewing on my phone because it was kind of a sketchy situation. I wasn't expecting it, but I thought, you just go for it. And we got the interview. We interviewed him, and it was kind of like it was happening. And then someone tried to call me, my co-host on the show, on the cycling show, which it was played on. Adam tried to call me, and the interview cut out in the last minute, and I missed the juiciest part, which is on a racism scandal at the time. And oh my God, I was gutted. I looked back at it afterwards, I was like, oh, what an amateur mistake. You're always meant to put your phone on airplane mode. But that's the sort of thing that you can get away with making on student media. Your editor, or not that there is an editor in student radio, but if you're in professional environment, your editor is not going to shout at you. And so that's a really big one. A couple others, like I said, I definitely swore on air a couple of times. I think also it learns you to admit that preparation is key. I think this is what people don't often understand in media is if a radio show is at a couple hours in the morning, they're spending the rest of the next day preparing that show for the day after. And so that's what it's all about, preparation and hard work. But yeah, no, that's getting way too boring on the topic. Let's move on to the next interview. And this is one where I spoke to Alexander Armstrong. He isn't somebody who's done student media before, but he spoke about the benefits that he sees from it and how he used something similar to get to where he is in his career. I'm not sure if there was student media kind of, or at your university or such, but would you kind of think it's maybe a good avenue for people to maybe have their first footstep into what it's like in the creative world?
I think unquestionably it's an amazing first step. Whatever it is you do at university, if you're doing, I mean, actually, when I was at university, comedy was my favourite thing, and there's a well-established comedy club at my university, so that was what gave me an instant leg up, actually. But I think any kind of media experience is so valuable because you leave university and you can, that you've developed a love for something and you've developed a kind of shorthand around things. You've already got an access into something, so everyone's going to be interested. When your CV lands on someone's desk, if it's something that you volunteered to do and you've done it off your own bat, then that's a huge recommendation because it shows that it's an enthusiasm with you rather than just a sort of. It's not just something you have to do as part of your module. It's a case of
if you want to go into media, it's why not have done student media before? It's kind of a dress rehearsal.
Yeah. Why the hell wouldn't you have done exactly? Why wouldn't you have done that?
I spoke to Dan Walker the other day. And he said that he did the same student media that I do actually.
Really?
And, up in Sheffield, and he said that why wouldn't you do it if you want to be a journalist? This is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
So if you don't enjoy it and you're not prepared to do it at university, why aren't you doing it now?
Why aren't you? And actually, it gets you out and about. It means you've actually got you've got a show reel. You've got or at least something you can send to people. You've got your best bits. Yeah, no, I think it's superb. I think anything you do. Also, it's lovely to be able to make your mistakes early on, when you're not.
Get your radio voice ready, but also get the confidence to be in front of camera and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got it. You've got Oliver. You'll be fine. You'll knock it out of the park. How much longer have you got at Sheffield?
So I've got a year and a half more at Sheffield, studying mechanical engineering actually, but maybe a broadcast journalism masters, and I'm a committee member there and going on to more things, a couple more years on committee hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Well, very, very best of luck with that. I think that's I think, as you say, this will stand you in colossally good stead. So that was the thoughts of Alexander Armstrong, the amazing, brilliant, the loved, pointless presenter, as well as Have I Got News For You and various other shows. I spoke to him back in March as well, and those were his thoughts. I thought it was really interesting how he was so positive on it, despite never really being involved in student media. And I think that shows you the belief within the industry of how it can really work, and also how it can work for you in terms of genuinely. If he's somebody who didn't even use it and went into media and believes in it, then even if you do it and don't go into media, it will still be beneficial for you. So I can't tell you how much and how good it is. But let's talk about his enthusiasm for clearly what he was interested in comedy at the time. And that's why I'm really enthusiastic in student media and in podcasting. It's because I love it. And like he said, you develop a love for something.
And showing enthusiasm for something is a brilliant first step, and you've got to be able to do that in an interview. You've got to be able to do that when you're applying for jobs, because they get millions of applications, and how do they know that you're the person for you? You know, you're sat there on a Friday night, you're a job employer, you're like, mate, got 100 applications, which one stands out on the paper? You're going to pick the one with the person with his own radio show, the person with his own written paper, story in the newspaper, his own YouTube video on the student TV channel, whatever it might be. Sorry, I can't speak at the moment, but nevertheless, that's what it's all about: standing out and kind of showing off in a way, because that's what you've got to do to get a job. And what have I got to show from it? I have started from absolutely nothing. I had barely anything on my CV. And it's given me an awful lot of stuff to kind of shout about in the interviews, an awful lot of stuff I'm really, really proud about. I was never any sort of high-achieving kid at school at all. But friends have come up to me who I went to school with and now said, oh, mate, you're doing really well, great. Keep it up and stuff like that. And that is really, really great to hear. And I'm sure that you guys know what I mean by that. And so it's given me the opportunity to start a podcast on cycling, which has won an award, and it's done loads of other things, been hugely recognised. We've been quoted in the BBC and loads of other articles, and there are loads of opportunities that it gives you, and it just gives you an opportunity to do whatever you want, however you want, and on the scale of whatever you want. Student media is often limited to people think, oh, it's not a big deal. And although I did kind of say that earlier in terms of the reach isn't very big, the reach doesn't have to be small. And if you create the right sort of content, the reach can be ginormous. And that's the potential of student media. It's like any other sort of media. You start from zero, and I think that's a really, really important part of it. Every student radio show initially has an audience of zero. You've got to convince people to tune in. You've got to convince people to keep on listening week after week. And that is a really, really good skill. And that is something which I can talk about from my own podcast. I can talk about from other sort of things that I've done at student radio. And ultimately, I have so much more to show about it. There's so much more to me as a person from student media. And that is why I'm so grateful. And that's why you should be doing it. What are you doing? Sign up, go on Facebook. There'll be a student media group. They'll have a Facebook members page. It's 2017. Come on. What are you doing? So, student media isn't only in the UK though. It is absolutely global, like I said earlier. And this is what you guys should be listening to and thinking. If you're abroad, if you're in America, if you're in Australia, if you're in whatever part of the world, there is most definitely, or most certainly, almost probably, a student radio station or a radio station that you can join. Whether it be radio, even press, or even TV, whatever you're into, there is an outlet that you can join and get involved. And so that is what I'm talking about. And here we hear from Sally Asher, who was formerly the Daily Collegian editor, which is a huge student publication in America. They have 54,000 followers on Twitter, which is big numbers for student radio. So check it out, and this is what her thoughts are on student media.
It's a good idea for students to join student-run media because it'll give them a chance to get a taste of what it's like to work in the real world. It looks really good on a resume. It gives you published work that you can take to an employer and say, hey, I've got stuff. Employers don't care about your classwork. They care about what you've published. Even if you have a 4.0 but you don't have anything published, they're not going to hire you. They'll hire the guy who had a 3.0 and had a bunch of stuff published. So the experience is more important. I think it's really great because you meet a lot of different people and you get an experience of working in a really diverse environment, which is a great experience for the real world because it's not just a classroom. Like it's the real deal. You're learning all kinds of stuff. You're meeting all kinds of people who help you broaden your horizons and your viewpoints. And I've learned stuff working in student media that I never thought I would have learned. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, you get to meet a lot of different people, a lot of different experiences, but it's just a blast.
So that was Sally Asher speaking on student media and why you should get involved. And I agree, it is absolutely like a blast if you would say if you're American, or fun if you're from the rest of the world. It is hugely fun. And again, like she was saying, with the 4.0, it's kind of like if you get a first or if you get a 2.2, she's saying that if you have something to show for it, then you're much more likely to be employed. And I completely agree with her from what I've heard from speaking to people and kind of inquiring about that. So another one thing I want to talk about, and despite kind of saying how huge the Daily Collegian student media outlet is, the reality is that most of the student medias or small radio stations are really tiny, and the listeners are small. Especially in 2017, people were going away from student radio, going away from newspapers, going towards kind of other forms of media. And so it's not about fame, and that's what student media is often not about. And it's not about trying to kind of create a name for yourself or anything like that. It's kind of trying to learn. I think that is the key point of student media, and it's ultimately what you want to do, because you want to prepare yourself for whatever comes next, whether it be, I don't know, sales. You're going to get good at speaking and kind of, chatting people up. Whereas if you're doing marketing, you get good at kind of designing logos and all that sort of thing. Whether you're doing other sorts of marketing or kind of making deals with companies in terms of advertising, whatever it might be, student media can really, really help you kind of create a niche. I study mechanical engineering. It has absolutely nothing to do with my degree. Trust me on this one. I get zero benefit in my degree, and my grades tell you that. But I absolutely love it, and it's kind of my sanctuary. Like, trust me, engineering at Sheffield University, which is a Russell Group university, it's similar to like Ivy League if you're in America or wherever else you are in the world. But it's tough. It's a lot of hours, and it's kind of like a safe haven. That's what I call it. It's we're not talking about tax here. We're talking like an island off the coast where you can just chill and relax, and that is what student media is for me, and it's a pleasure to do it. So within that, if you want to get into the media industry, it is perfect. It is quite literally a dress rehearsal. It's like wanting to be a professional footballer and not playing football until you're 18. Come on, guys, what are you doing? So I kind of looked up online, and this is some examples from The Guardian, from the student media judges that they had on their awards show when it was all going on. This clip is from 2015, and these are what the judges think about student media and how good it is to get into the media industry.
You can go off and report on any story. You can come up with any story. All it takes is initiative, the drive to go and do it. You need to make sure that you can put together a piece of journalism, take it to an organisation, whether print organisation, radio or television, that you can be proud of, show it to people, and you'd be surprised how quickly you might find yourself climbing up a ladder.
I always think the best way to get into the media is to think what you have to offer. And most people don't think about things like that. They always start with yourself. What stories have you got that no one else can tell about yourself? And whenever anyone writes to me and says, I've got a really good personal story to tell, they're the people that I always commission.
Top tip for getting into the media is just do it. These days, there should be no barriers to getting involved. Start writing things, start doing things online, use the tools at your disposal, just do it.
I think you've got to produce, basically. Nothing is too small, no subject is too obscure. Get in there, get writing about it, and get your stuff online, because you can publish yourself now.
Begin referring and thinking of yourself as a freelancer. Anybody can do journalism nowadays. We all have the tools that are needed to produce news. And I think lots and lots of people have the skills and the ability to do it too.
And everybody has a different way of doing it. I think, which is important, an important point to mention, because I think there's no particularly good way, and if you try and follow other people's ways, it's not necessarily going to work for you.
Try to find your voice, which I know is quite hard, but don't be frightened of putting yourself into a piece. Don't try and imitate others. Make sure your punctuation, spelling and grammar is good. It's really, really basic, but really important. And just be persistent, because persistence pays off, not just in getting your foot in the door, but also when it actually comes to good journalism.
Be prepared to start at the very bottom. It's better to be in the offices of a great website or a great newspaper, making the tea, listening in, than it is to immediately start going for graduate traineeships. Don't worry about where you start, just get your foot in the door, and you'll be surprised how quickly you're able to move up if it's what you want to do.
Be tenacious. Be relentless, don't give up and keep on shouting until someone listens to you. What you need, though, is you need a really clear voice. Nobody wants to read anything generic. No one wants to feel that they've read that before. if you have a strong opinion, make sure you stick to it and say what you really think, because while people may not always agree with you, people remember what you've written if you really call it straight. So don't sit on the fence, say what you mean, say it passionately, have the knowledge to back it up, and if people aren't listening, just keep shouting loud and knocking on their door until they do.
Those are the thoughts of people in the industry, such as Mark Austin, who's an ITV News reporter, presenter even, and Mike Williams, who's an editor. There are so many people and so many incredible people in that little clip. So thank you for The Guardian for lending me it. But nevertheless, hopefully you got an idea of kind of some of the different benefits that I've spoken about today. There are tons. I can't tell you enough about them. And lastly, on the last kind of segment of the day, I want to just hear a bit of a clip of an interview I did with Rick Kelsey, who is a BBC One Newsbeat presenter. I'm absolutely positive you've heard his voice before, somewhere in your car, on the way, wherever you are. And it was really, really fun doing a little piece for Radio 1. And afterwards, I turned the tables with him, grabbed a little interview, and here's what he said, kind of his tip to get into the media industry and what he would tell you to do. And finally, what best piece of advice which you give to people to get their foothold into the media industry?
Even though it's tough to get into broadcasting, I would say the best bit of advice I can do is have a specialism, which might sound ridiculous and nobody ever tells you this, but if you've got a specialism, then someone will at some point need you, and once you get your foot in the door, you can then go and do loads of stuff. So have a broad knowledge, but have one thing that you are the go-to person on that subject, whatever that is. If it's like, go-kart racing, gardening, horticulture, anything, whatever it is, have a specialism and absolutely nail it when your opportunity comes round.
So those were the words of BBC Radio 1's Rick Kelsey, and I completely agree with him. It does often really pay off to specialise. But he made a brilliant point, which also carries over into other industries, or you've got to kind of hedge your bets and be good in other things as well. And I think if you're the number one flip-shop salesman in the country, at some point you're going to get a job, because it's just going to work out, and people need the people who are best in those subjects. And so it's kind of a really important note that I want to end this student media and getting involved in the media industry kind of podcast on. Like, just give it a go. Don't be afraid. I was absolutely petrified the first time I went on radio and on TV, and the first time I wrote an article. I thought I was terrible at all of them, and I probably was terrible at all of them at the time. I probably still am terrible at all of them now. But you improve massively, and it's always great fun. Thank you very much for listening. Please give us a review on iTunes. It really helps us out. That's how they kind of judge which podcast they should promote. Check us out on social medias. We're at Listen Upcast on all of the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So give us a follow there, and we'll be releasing kind of information about what the next show is, when's it coming out, and all the other things that you need to know if you like the show. So thank you very much for listening. This has been Ollie Baisley, and we'll see you next time.